first Studio Inter of 2023. We will be reviewing the games against Napoli and Monza, discussing if the Suning project is dead, if there is a hope for Scudetto. We'll be previewing the Parma and Hellas Verona games, this week's Moggi, Moratti and Frog, and much, much more. Everything here on Studio Inter on SempreInter.com. Benvenuti, bentornati to the first Studio Inter of the calendar year 2023. I'm your host, Nerazzurri, wishing you back to a pod where I hope you've all had a nice, relaxing break. I hope you enjoyed the World Cup and that you're raring to go with Inter again, because Inter are already. It's only been 3-4 days since the Serie A season started again, and Inter have given us quite a bit to talk about, as they always do. But before I get to all of that, let me begin by introducing our panelist. He is the preview writer for SempreInter.com, Mr. Mohammed Nassar. How are you doing, Mo? You're going to really work for that positive Mr. Positivity tagline today, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Yeah, I'm here for you guys. Positivity and, silver linings all the way. Let's go.
He writes a weekly column called "What 5 Things We Learned from Inter This Week." Mr. Jake Smalley, how are you? How was Christmas? How was New Year's?
It was good, thank you. Yeah, I've just sort of managed to shake off a bit of a cold. I've still got remnants with a bit of a sore throat, but had a bit of a lost voice. But yeah, very refreshed and ready to talk some Inter with you guys today.
And we're also joined by a good friend of the show. He has his own YouTube channel called Uncle Sharma. Welcome, Mr. Uncle Sharma. I call him the chief commander of the Korea sexuals.
My lawyers will be in touch, Nima.
I love how I just invented that narrative.
Everyone's bought it.
I know.
I can't get rid of this tag.
Oh, God. You were annoying me that day. It's your own fault. I'll tell everyone how this whole thing started. It was when Inter were choosing between Marcus Thuram and Joaquin Correa, and I really did not want Joaquin Correa. And you were really bugging me that day and annoying me, saying, "Oh, baller, drip, sauce," and all that bullshit that you do. And I was like, and so I came up with it. And I know that you only did it to annoy me. So, yeah. Well, I guess that backfired, didn't it?
Yeah, and then I also embraced it last season. I was like, oh, how bad can it go? I'll embrace it. It's gone as bad as it possibly could have. So yeah, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, well, it's good to have you back. Right, let's get right to it, because Inter, it is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's in the DNA of this club, but there's a difference, because what we saw against Napoli was a team that looked like they were not only contenders to win the Scudetto, they were the favourites to win the Scudetto based on that performance, the way they dominated a Napoli side that has, well, I mean, not just won games in the Serie A. I mean, they won their Champions League group, the way they've mopped the floor with every team they've played in Europe, including Liverpool. Every attacking stat, Napoli have been outstanding, and Inter just go out there and blow them out of the water. Napoli's first shot on target is in 90th minute or something when Onana makes that save from Raspadori. But then 3 days later, Inter go to Monza and pull out one of the most. I mean, I honestly can't remember when Inter were so bad after being so good as they were against Monza. It was a stinker, and I think that's, we're going to get into the individuals as well, because Romelu Lukaku, God bless him, he embodies that performance. He's become the symbol of that game and everything that was wrong with it. But I mean, I'm going to start with you, Mo. Do you think that this lack of consistency, because that's what it is, does it show that that we may have overestimated the quality of this squad, or do you Or do you think more that it's down to just them having, collectively having a bad day? Do you see it as a tactical issue? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, again, I think that ultimately my problems aren't so much with the squad as much as they are with Inzaghi. I think we've criticized Inzaghi so often at not being able to win the big games. He finally did it. He did it against Napoli. But then, surely, when Lautaro comes and says there wasn't the voglia to win, the desire to win against Monza, so there wasn't the will to win, like I just said in the game. And when the players come out and say this, I think it points to the manager in not having prepared the squad correctly mentally. I think ultimately, when Inzaghi is motivated and believes that the team can win, the team does in fact win. When he feels that the game is daunting or he's unmotivated to, or let's say not unmotivated, yeah, I'm sure he's always motivated, but doesn't prepare the squad in the right manner mentally, this is when things go sideways. I think again, there's no reason why Inter shouldn't have won. I mean, refereeing, ridiculous refereeing error aside, but really there's no reason why Inter should not have won this game quite handily, despite Berlusconi and Galliani's best efforts, to do a Sassuolo. It's kind of like playing Sassuolo away, and as a manager you should know that this is not Salernitana way. It's not this is a game where the team you're playing against, regardless of their stature, is extremely motivated to beat you. And it's probably, again, like I say, the same way it used to be against Sassuolo a few years ago. So, yeah, I think it's just poor preparation from the manager, to be honest.
Rahul, what are your thoughts on do you think it's an Inzaghi issue, or do you think it's a tactical issue, it's a qualitative issue?
I think it's more of a mentality issue, in my opinion, because like what Lautaro said, I saw his similarly to what Mo said just now, but he said to Rise Sport, he said we didn't want, or we didn't have enough will to win, and we need to change this. It's like I'm just completely baffled, man. Like, this is pretty much the exact same team that won the Scudetto just over a year ago. So a lot of these guys have that now title winning experience. They know the mentality it takes to get things over the line, even against the smaller teams, and it's just all seems like it's flown out of the window. And obviously some of that has to do, obviously the coach has to do with that as well. The team is in the image of a coach, and we know Inzaghi is slightly on the softer side when it comes to manager approaches, but at the same time, these guys are the ones that cried on the last day against Sampdoria when Milan won the Scudetto in front of us. They made banners about our players. They sang, stings about Hakan and his other things. But see, like, I don't know how they've started the season in this way. I don't get it. I'm so disappointed in the way these players have come out this whole season.
The thing is, there's a few things that drive me that I hate about Italian football in terms of the cliches that they spew out, the players and the pundits. This notion of we didn't have the will and desire to win. That makes absolutely no sense to me when you watch that game. It's not an issue of desire or hunger when Edin Dzeko can barely walk, when Francesco Acerbi is so exhausted. They all look devoid of energy. That's not a mental thing. That's a personnel issue. You've got an old squad. You've got an old squad of your players. Your key players in 2023 are Francesco Acerbi, through no fault of his own or anyone's own. It's just that's how it is. Stefan de Vrij is what it is, and Francesco Acerbi, when Inter play this deep, is the player you pick, and we saw why against Napoli. But the thing is, to play Dzeko, Mkhitaryan, Acerbi 3 times a week in 2023 just doesn't work. And I don't see a tactical issue at all against Monza. No. Because if it was a tactical issue, that can be addressed. And Inzaghi did everything. He tried so many different things tactically. But so for me, that doesn't hold up to scrutiny. The Monza game. I'm talking just about the Monza game, not the other defeats against Udinese or Lazio or Milan, etc. Which, I mean, were definitely tactical issues as well as other things. But here I don't see a tactical issue. Here I see a team this is the hallmark of a mediocre team, in the sense that they go out there and they play the best game they have ever played, and then 3 days later against a mid-table side, they stink up the joint. That to me is classic. Maybe not mediocre. Maybe I'm being too harsh there, but it's not a title. That's not a title winning. That's not how a title winning side behaves.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean by mentality. Yeah. It's the same guys that you'd think know how to do this. Like, I know the Dzeko Mkhitaryan is definitely a Cherby. You could see their bodies just disintegrating in front of our own eyes as they try to chase and try to press. But like how Lukaku and Dumfries came on, Dumfries losing that header to Caldirola, like the size of Dumfries, his jumping ability, his athleticism, he should be dominating that ball. Lukaku, I mean, I'm not even going to go there.
No, we're going to talk about him because that is just he has his own segment today. Like, it's just, so don't we'll get to him. Jake, what are your thoughts on what happened? I mean, the sheer contrast of Napoli and Monza.
I know you've sort of got a bit of a segment prepared for later to deal with this, but I think the main crux of it is down to the ownership of the club at the moment, and that's the biggest problem, because it translates to what you see on the pitch. You've just talked in detail about 3 players who are approaching mid, some already mid, and in Dzeko's case, he's close to 40 than 30. So Inter have been left with a squad of players who have already won the league, as we've seen. You've hit that sort of high point under a manager who probably demanded a bit more from them, you could argue, in terms of how intense Conte was in comparison to Inzaghi. I think, Sir Alex Ferguson said it. It's easier to win the one title. It's harder to keep doing it over and over again. So it's having to motivate those players to keep going and going again. They've seen players sold. Hakimi, Lukaku initially, before he's come back with this weird donkey version of himself that's now returned. And I think that's sort of translated onto the pitch. When I think about it now, I was just thinking about it whilst you two were talking, and what is really the aim for Inter this season? What will make it a successful season? It's probably looking like a Champions League run and finishing in the top 4. And prior to the season beginning, you would have hoped for a bit of a title push, but that gets sucked away when you've got an ownership who isn't investing properly in the squad, and it's denying that from happening. And you've got uncertainty over one of the most important players at the club, who absolutely loves the club, whether he's going to be there or not, because they're scribbling over paying that bit extra for his contract. So I think that there must be something within these players that sits there and thinks, well, we've already won the league as a group of us. What's the ambition of the club? Is it to strengthen and keep pushing to win titles? Is it to win the Champions League? No, not really. We can't afford anything. So almost, what is the point, really? I think I'm being quite cynical, maybe, perhaps, but I think it's hard to see what positivity you can really break from the current ownership situation. I think it's really holding the club back, and I think you can tell the reflection of the players, in my opinion, anyway.
I think you're spot on, and we're going to get to that as well. And I think just dealing with the Monza game alone, I mean, we've got to talk about the referee, because I want to get into that point, because I think that is the broader point, and I think everyone kind of agrees with that. But we have to talk about the refereeing as well, and I want to make this absolutely clear. I'm not blaming in any shape, size, or form Inter's stinky performance on the referee. That had nothing to do with the referee, but that is one of the biggest mistakes we've seen in the VAR era. It's like Luca Marelli said on DAZN. I think he said it brilliantly. He said it's the same dynamism as the Milan Spezia issue that we saw here. He blows his whistle even before the ball is there, and there's no need to do that, and also then you see, then of course, I mean, a part of me was like, well, at least couldn't have Gagliardini have just elbowed the guy? But no, the 2 Monza players run into one another, which just makes it just adds its insult to injury. Which is so frustrating. But yeah, no, I mean, that is a dreadful That is a dreadful refereeing error, and we there's not much to say other than that. And in the VAR, it should not happen because you've got the VAR to double check that. So the referees have to be cooler, and I don't understand what he was doing. I think Saki generally had a horrible day overall, not just that, but for both teams. I think he was dreadful. He was so inconsistent, and he really created more problems than needed to be. It was a really cranky atmosphere on the pitch because of how he controlled or didn't control the game, I should say. But let's talk about that then. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. And no, I'm not talking about Romelu Lukaku trying to turn with the ball at his feet. I'm talking about which it looked like, to be honest. Have you ever seen a BBC nature show? Like that's how slow, like an elephant turning around. That's how it looked when Lukaku tried to turn yesterday.
We need the Attenborough commentary on that.
Exactly. No, I'm talking about this ownership, and I'm not just talking about the ownership. I'm looking from everything from top to bottom. The ownership can't invest. The last two summer transfer windows, they've set a target of profit from the transfer window, that has to be met regardless of anything else, and which is fair enough because I think Suning have done a fantastic job modernizing Inter from where they look at where they were and where they were the club right now, but they're now, they can't invest. They have to balance the books. That means that because of Italian football not raising enough revenue, the bulk of that revenue has to come from the summer transfer market, which means you sell your best players and you buy players that are cheaper, which usually translates into less quality players, of players of a lower quality. So that's just generally how it works. But then you also look at Moratti and Ausilio, and look, again, I think Ausilio and Moratti have done a fantastic job. But Inter's three last marquee signings have been Joaquin Correa, Robin Gosens, and Romelu Lukaku. Not a single one has even done decently. They've all been flops so far, that is. And that is also something to take into consideration. And of course, we got Simone Inzaghi. He's a young manager. Young managers are going to make mistakes. But I mean, it's just, to me, I honestly think the Suning Inter project is dead as the dodo, to continue the animal analogy. It's as dead as the dodo is, and it's extinct, and it's going to continue unless one of two things happen: Suning sell, or Suning can start to invest. I don't think the latter is going to happen. So it remains: will there be anything left when Suning end up selling the club? Is there anything worth salvaging, or do the new owner have to begin everything from scratch? What's your thoughts, Mo?
So the case for optimism is very small, but also quite clear. China just removed their lockdown, zero COVID policies. So the hope would be that this brings back a lot of money into Suning's coffers as people go out and start shopping and the Chinese commerce picks up again. But that's not going to have an effect in at least maybe 6 to 8 months, at least, if things do continue to improve as the economy does rebound, unless something catastrophic happens there. But I think fundamentally, I mean, look, I don't want to get into too much economics, but cheap money's over. High interest rates on the dollar means that investment companies can't leverage themselves out to buy stuff. So generally, as money becomes more and more expensive, buying stuff becomes less and less readily or available or possible. So I would imagine that unless you're talking about PIF again, like the rumors of PIF or some big wealthy Gulf.
This is it.
GCC,
this is it.
Fund. There's no real buyers in the world at the moment, particularly not in the league that generates the amount of money that the Serie A does at the moment. When you can go up and pick up a Burnley or even I don't know, insert mid-tier Premier League team name. Just they probably make more revenues, more consistent revenues. The than Inter. So your only chance to recoup your money if you're not investing in a Premier League side would be for the side to do well in the Champions League. That's a tough sell. Whereas the Premiership have created this money making machine you just plug into. Any investor comes in, plugs into. You look at Newcastle now. PIF go buy Newcastle, and lo and behold, they're making money, and everyone's happy. And it's a project they can ultimately turn into something that makes sense for the new ownership. That's certainly not the case for the Serie A or the Liga or the Bundesliga or the Ligue 1. It's very particular to the Premier League. And again, that brings us back to the fucking story of, pardon my language, but the European Super League.
Yeah.
Without the European Super League, all these teams die. So so this is where we're at.
Yeah.
Unless Suning organically or someone else, like I said, Arab or Chinese or whatever, has the money and the caprice to buy a side like Inter, it's just not going to happen. So we just hope that what destroyed Suning's wealth, the Zhang dynasty's wealth over the past 2 years, since these conditions have been now lifted, that at least they can then, generate their own revenues to the point where they can start looking at the Inter project, and Steven can start looking at the Inter project with some bit of optimism. That's the hope.
That's spot on. That's exactly what it is. So, therefore, it's not a frozen project, as Conte said. It's dead until further notice. And right now, it's damage control. And I think it's the reason why I keep belaboring this point is because I think it's important to be honest with fans. I think it's important to be honest with listeners, with people, with Inter fans. That and I don't think they are. And I understand that they can't be. It's not like they can come out and say, you know what, we're screwed. Good night. Like that's not something they can say. I get that. But I think it's important that we understand where we are. And I think you just explained it brilliantly, Mo, as to why and how and what could happen. And I think that is exactly how it is. The Oak Tree loan matures in 2024, in the summer of 2024. I think Suning will refinance that from somewhere else at a more advantageous loan terms. And I think this is where they're going to continue until they no longer can. That's just my guess of it. So let's not dwell on that anymore. So this is our reality. Let's move to the Lukaku situation, because I don't even know where to begin with this. Raul, I mean, look, it's not even the bad first touch. It's the body language. He didn't win a single challenge. His body language, he got in the way of Lautaro. He didn't get a single shot or didn't even get a shot away. Didn't create anything. Couldn't even hold up the ball. Because I've been thinking about this now, and it's not just these last few months. It's 18 months now. And I think, this is my personal opinion, I honestly think that Romelu Lukaku is finished at the absolute top level. I don't think he will ever become anywhere near the player he was those 2 years with Antonio Conte. And if we're perfectly honest, those were the only 2 years where he was world class. Before that, he scored a lot, but he was never world class. Under Conte, those 2 years, he was consistently world class. I don't think we'll ever see him at that level. And the question is, given the injuries, and now today we hear that he's got inflammation in his knee, and he's had an inflammation in his tendons, and we know that he needs at least 4 or 5 games to get going. I'm thinking, is his career at this level is finished? What do you think, Raul?
Yeah, no, ever since Patrick Kendrick made that point on the Studio Interpod about his potentially, he's probably the point of diminishing returns now when it comes to Lukaku and his body, because he's been going since Anderlecht, since 16 years of age, and he's probably got the most out of his body that he physically can, and now it's just going to be getting worse and worse when it comes to, and I mean, he completely relies, as much as, you want to make fun of it, but he does completely rely on his athleticism and his physique for, most of his ability relies on that. So it really is all hinging on that. And then if he can't even add that, I mean, well, that's the one thing that we, when we brought him in, if we ignore the Chelsea here, we would say, okay, this guy at least is reliable physically. He hardly ever gets injured. And, you know, in the Serie A, his physique and athleticism still would make a big difference and dominate, but you're not getting the reliability, you're not getting the minutes, you're not getting the physical dominance. So what are you actually getting? Because apart from that, yes, he's got, as you said, he's got a good eye for goal. That's what he used to do before at Everton, West Brom. But yeah, there's not really a selling point after that to Lukaku without his physical attributes. So yeah, you probably have a point, and I would investigate or like see if it's possible to cut this loan deal early with Chelsea. I don't know if it's possible or not. You know, the whole package cost us what, 20 million? How much of that have we paid? Is it possible to cut this short and maybe try to reinvest some of that money somewhere else, like Marcus Thuram? I don't know.
That's a good point. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think Chelsea will do it, and I think it would take something really dramatic for that to happen. But yeah, if it was possible, I think they should do that. I want to go to you, Jake. You were already alluding to the Lukaku issue, but I mean, what are we seeing here? What's your take on the situation?
I think it's quite a tough one to watch, especially when you consider the player that he was in the 2 years he was here last. And I think that year or so at Chelsea prior to this season has not done him any favours. I think Lukaku is a bit more of a sensitive soul than perhaps, you know, it's broadcasted at times. I think going into that Chelsea move, his sole motivation, in my opinion, I might be totally wrong, was to prove people wrong and prove that, right, I've had 2 years in Italy. I played absolutely fantastically. I've won the league. I've been probably the best player in this league. I'm in the shape of my life. I'm going to go to the Premier League and I'm going to absolutely smash it. All these haters who'll be criticising me when I played in England will shut up finally. And he's gone into a Chelsea team totally out of this type of system that he's used to, that he had under Conte, and he's flopped. And I think it's weighed down on him. He's had a really tough World Cup as well, where he's gone and he's, you know, looked a bit silly again with that missing the crucial game for Belgium. And, you know, and obviously, like we've mentioned a couple of times, just the injuries are starting to take a toll. You do forget, you know, look at Wayne Rooney. I mean, he looks like a pork pie now. You know, he's what, 37? You know, he looks dreadful, doesn't he?
He really looks old. He has not aged well. Like,
No.
he's younger than me, and he looks like twice my age. Like, it really is. He's not aged gracefully.
But he was playing football when he was 16 years old, wasn't he? And, you know, Lukaku's the same. You forget Lukaku's had a playing career, you know, that's gone on for, you know, over a decade already, and he's not quite 30 yet. So, and these injuries, inflammation injuries in particular, are injuries that, you know, they're niggling problems. And, you know, if he's getting them now, if he's going to get to sort of 32, 33, you know, you do wonder. And I think mentally he's not in a great place. And physically he's really struggling. I'm sad that it's sort of ended up this way. I am a footballing romantic. I'm someone who really likes to have this sort of almost feel-good story a lot of the time. So it's quite sad for me to see it. I think I'm with Rahul as well. I think if it was up to me, I'd probably look in this window at trying to end that loan as harsh as it is.
What about you, Mo? What you're Mr. Positivity. I double dare you to find something positive about this situation.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's very little positive about the current situation with Lukaku. I still believe that, you know, I've always, my complaint and gripe with Lukaku has always been he's a very temperamental player, kind of like a Pogba. You know, they're not strong-minded players like a Cristiano Ronaldo, as much as mockery that he's made of himself in the last year or so. But he is very strong-willed and of a very strong mind, and he's always willing, or had always been willing, to not only sacrifice himself for the team, but also make sure that he sacrifices his lifestyle for his body and the longevity of his career. I mean, you certainly can't compare the physical demands that Cristiano has made of his body at the age of 38 versus, you know, albeit, you know, since 16, but it's still a decade and a decade and change of playing football at the highest level. So if Lukaku, I would imagine, being the physical specimen that he is, had invested the time, the mentality, the discipline in ensuring that his body, maintains its health and is able to fulfill the demands he needs for his style of play, I would imagine that he would. But he's a temperamental player, just like Jake said, just like Rahul said as well. He's a very temperamental player. Attitude is almost everything. He needs to feel loved. He needs to feel embraced. And he's going through a slump. It was a slump at Chelsea, and then it was a bit of a flop at Inter, despite being embraced by the fans. But still, the Curva were a bit lukewarm, but the general public embraced him back. But he was physically unfit, and then he had the shitty World Cup. But he's in a bad mental state. And surely that weighs, like Jake had just said, weighs down on the way he approaches his fitness and his setup. He's not the kind of, I don't know. I don't know Lukaku personally, but he doesn't seem to me to be the kind of player who's able to compartmentalize this or that and just focus on the task at hand and getting better and doing well. I would argue that Lautaro is probably much stronger minded, despite him being or the best Lautaro is a much patchier player than the best Lukaku. But I would still say that Lautaro is probably stronger willed and more able to focus at the task in hand. Despite having an awful World Cup, he did score that last ultimate penalty that was of such critical importance for Argentina to win the World Cup. In a million years, I don't see Lukaku ever scoring that particular penalty, having played the way he had played up to that point in the World Cup. He probably would have flubbed it and missed it. So I think Lukaku's issue stems from two things: physical preparation and mental preparation. Physical preparation, Fintus did wonders with him. I don't know if he can ever do the same with any other manager. And mentally, he's not a young boy anymore. The man's going to decide for himself what he wants to do. Get a mental coach, get some proper recovery training, some hyperbaric chamber sort of work. I don't know. Just the world is full of, so many examples of men in particular pushing their bodies past, 35, even 40 at the highest level in fighting, in rock climbing, in this and that. And it's no longer a secret, you need to invest in your body and treat it well. So I don't know if he's doing that, or if he's willing to do that, or if he has done that and it's still not working out for him. But to me, it's physical and mental preparation on Lukaku's part.
The Napoli game, though, to me, like if we need to force a positive note out of this, I felt like I saw some positives there. Like he got in behind the Napoli defense so many times, and Kim and Rahmani did not have an easy time with him in the first half, and he could have given an assist for Di Marco. And
that's another thing. I actually think he's really underrated in terms of his crossing with his left foot. I think his crosses, and I think it's not just this time around. I remember the first turn when he was under Conte, he was very good when he used to drift out to the right hand side and cross the balls in from the right hand side with his left foot. They used to go like to the far post, and they used to cause a lot of trouble for defenders. I actually think that's something I'd like to see him do more often. But the thing is that, given how Inter don't communicate about, the problem is when you don't tell people the truth, and I'm not going to say that they've lied, but when you don't tell people the truth and you say, oh, he's going to be back for next week, and then that week, no, I'll need another week. That's what they've done with the Brozovic injury. That's what they've done with the Lukaku injury. And then Lukaku himself, got to say, he's not exactly the most media trained guy in the world, comes out and says that, oh, this is one of the worst injuries in my career. That essentially says, yeah, the club has been, running, trying to, muddy the waters on his injury. Well, then you see, you get these, at least for me anyway, I start to second guess everything they say. And I have trouble believing anything that comes out of it. Is this injury just an inflammation in the knee? Is it more serious than that? Was it just an inflammation? Was it just a tendon, inflammation in his tendon, muscle? What is true and what isn't true? And this is something that they've just done in the past 1 or 2 years. They never used to, injuries was always very clear. He's injured for 3 weeks. He's injured for 2 weeks. He could be back. Do you know what I mean? This notion of pretending, he'll be back in 7 days, and then 5 days after that, he'll be back in another 7 days, and that's just so strange. I really, really find it really strange. And the club's communication in this, it's clearly a strategy that they've chosen. I get, again, I understand you don't want to give more information to your opponents than you need to, but this isn't exactly Texas Hold'em poker bluffing that we're doing here. Because at the end of the day, he's played 355 minutes so far this season. It's just not good enough. And then he pulls off that performance, which is, in my opinion, probably. I'm counting Battistuta when Moratti brought him in. I'm counting Rocky, Livaya, that Belfodil. That is the worst performance. The worst 30 or so minutes I've seen an Inter striker do in the last decade and a half. It was absolutely unwatchable.
But he outdid Correa. I didn't know that Correa's performance against Napoli. I was like, that's the worst.
That was bad in and of itself. And then he comes along and does that. No, it was genuinely, and it's really, really worrying because I don't see. I hope I'm wrong, and I don't want to be negative, but I don't see how, with Chelsea interested, how Inter managed to get Marcos Thuram. I really don't, because they'll just double anything that Inter give, and they'll get him. So it's not a good situation, for sure. But let's move on from this. At the end of the day, it was a draw. I still don't think that a team that loses 5 games out of 17 can win the Serie A, but top 4 is definitely achievable, and Inter are only 3 points behind second and third place Milan and Juve. So I still think this is turning out to be. With 7 points clear, Napoli, this is now becoming their Scudetto to lose, isn't it? It's really becoming like that. But having said that, we have to move on, and Inter's focus has to be the Supercoppa, and it has to be the Champions League, finish top 4 and try to get to the quarterfinals of the Champions League, which I think is an incredible accomplishment if they manage to do that. But on that note, do we think the Scudetto race is over? I think it is. What about you, Mo? I'll start with you, Mo, and then I'll go to Rahul and Jake. Do you think it's Mo?
Muting issues. Sorry. No, I don't think it's over at all. No. We know Spalletti teams. My only worry is that either Milan or Juve win it. I would gladly finish 4th instead of 2nd any day, as long as it doesn't make zero difference to me. 2nd, 3rd, 4th doesn't matter, as long as we finish in the top 4, unless it's the 1st. As long as neither Milan nor Juve win, Napoli can. But I'm always a bit weary of Spalletti teams come January and February. So let's see. But I don't think it's over. 7 points is very, very achievable. I think the game against Napoli really. In a way, maybe it's good to have the Monza game come after the Napoli game, just so that everyone realizes that it's not. There's still a lot of work to be done, and I hope as long as they're learning, Inzaghi and the squad are learning from this. But I certainly don't think the Scudetto race is over. It's just 7 points, man. 7 points is nothing. Nothing. And there's more than half a season.
It's 10 points, isn't it? No, it's the other way. It's 7 points. No, hang on. No, you're making me confused now. It's 7 points to Milan and Napoli.
So 10 points to us? Okay.
Yeah, 10 points to Inter. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Still nothing, really nothing. Nothing with more than half the season left.
No,
more than half the season left to play.
That's true. We're not even at the halfway point. That's a really good point.
Yeah. We've got 2 games to halfway. There's
and Juve are playing.
How many times were Inter ahead at Christmas or at the halfway point, Campione dell'Inverno, with 6 points ahead, 7 points ahead, 8 points ahead, and we end up, barely scraping by us at 4th base. It's just as long as there's consistent progress from the side, which I had thought we had seen against Napoli, but then of course the Monza game came. But if Inzaghi really is going to do something, now's the time.
What about you, Rahul? Do you still believe in a Scudetto? or are you a little bit with me that nah?
No. As you said, a team that's already lost five times. We've already conceded 24 goals. Like that's no Scudetto winning. So unless they prove me wrong in the second half of the season, I just don't see it. I don't see it, man. I've given up on to me it's top four, and try to make a run in the Champions League if possible, and Coppa Italia, Supercoppa if we can. That's still a good season to me if we can do that.
Yeah, no, agreed. What about you, Jake? Where are you on this?
Well, can I just say, if I ever become diagnosed with some serious life-threatening illness or something, I'd like Mo to tell me, because I'd be able to look at it in the nicest way possible. So I think for me, it's absolutely dead in the water. I think, you talk about a points gap as well. You're expecting Napoli to lose at least 4 more games than Inter over the rest of this season, when they've only lost 1 and Inter have lost 5. It's as simple as that. Top 4, beat Porto, see where things end up in the Champions League, and hopefully win the Supercoppa as well. I take that, I think.
Fair enough. Well, speaking of Coppa Italia and all that jazz, Inter start their defense of the Coppa Italia against Parma on Wednesday in Parma in Serie B, and if we're perfectly honest, I just to go through how the draw looks. So Inter play Parma, and the winner of that plays the winner of Atalanta Spezia. And in Inter's half of the draw as well, you've got Lazio Bologna, and the winner of that plays the winner of Juventus Monza. So essentially, the quarterfinal looks like I think it will be Inter Atalanta and Lazio Juve. And then it's Inter Atalanta winner versus Juve Lazio winner. I have a feel. I think Juve are going to win the Coppa Italia. Because on the other half, you got Napoli, Cremonese, Roma, Genoa. They meet in the quarterfinal, Napoli, Roma, probably. And then Fiorentina, Sampdoria, Milan, Torino. I'm thinking Napoli, Juve final of Coppa Italia, and I think Juve win that. But we'll see. What do you think, Mo? What do you reckon we can? How far do you think we can go in this tournament, or do you even care? Because I've seen a lot of people.
You know me. I hope we get knocked out against Parma. That's how much I hate that stupid competition.
I like that we won it last season. Now I don't care, because I think it's more important. The Champions League and the Supercoppa and the Serie are more important. Like, genuinely. Yeah. Inter have already won it.
You're just talking about 36-year-old players with their tongues hanging out of their mouths as they're running. Like the less games we have to play, the better off everyone is this season. And that's it. Khalas. We get some silverware from the Supercoppa, and the Coppa Italia can go off to greener pastures for the season. As long as you guys still believe in a strong Champions League run and the Scudetto.
Well, I'm kind of with that as well, but I don't think Inter are going to lose to Parma. I think they'll actually go. I think they'll beat Parma. But yeah, so there's not really not much to talk about this game. Really, it's not too much, not much to say. But there is a lot to say about Hellas Verona, who tonight, we're recording this on a Monday evening, beat Cremonese, and they need points. They're on 9 points, 6 points up to Spezia, above the relegation battle. And they come to the San Siro, where Inter actually have one of the best home records in the Serie A. Inter have played 8 games, won 7, lost 1, scored 20 goals, conceded 4. Now that's the form that a team that wins the Serie A does, but the Inter's away form is played 9, won 4, drawn 1, lost 4, 17 goals scored, 20 conceded. But luckily Inter are not playing Hellas Verona away. And they're not playing Hellas Verona away. They're playing Hellas Verona at home, because that's the only thing that could have made this situation more worse is playing at the Bentegodi in January, when Inter are having some sort of a identity crisis, as they do every year. But look, I mean, Hellas, Rahul, surely what are we talking about here, right? I mean, that's got to be 3 points. No? What are you expecting?
Yeah, no, surely you can't mess that one up. Even though, yeah, they've got a win today, but they're just absolute mess. They're one of those teams that really shot themselves in the foot in the summer transfer window. They just got rid of the decent players they had and didn't really replace them. And yeah, their coach left, so surely we should be able to beat these guys quite comfortably, whatever team we put out, even if Lukaku is still injured or if Barella or Hakan are still injured. We should be able to get the 3 points against Hellas Verona at home. And I hope we continue this home record. At least we can rely on one side of our form. We definitely can't rely on our away form at the moment, but I hope we continue. And yeah, our fan base just continues turning up, and 60,000 plus every home game. So they definitely deserve to see good performances at home at least.
Oh, Inter fans have the way that Inter fans have flocked and turned up to the stadium despite, well, a rather disappointing season so far is really commendable. I do want to, they do have Milan Djuric, they have Thomas Henry. These are big players, big physical players. So I expect someone like Acerbi to start that game because of the sheer height and physical presence that he has. But I think Josh Doig, the left wing back, is a decent player, and the Swedish central defender Isak Hien has been pretty good as well. And Ivan Ilic is a player I like. But other than that, I mean, with all due respect, this is I think Inter should win this 2-3-0. So I'm going to say 2-0. I'm going to say Dzeko will score, and I think Di Marco will score. Well, what's your prediction, Raul? And then I'm going to go to Jake, and then I'm going to go to Mo.
Yeah, I'll go along with something like that. Or actually, I'm gonna go 3-0. I think once we open them up, I think they'll start flooding in. I'll go with the Lautaro, and I'll go with the Skriniar off a corner and announcing his renewal. Double whammy goal from Skriniar.
Ooh, I like that.
I'm one of the positive ones on that.
Yeah,
positive.
I like that. I hope you're right. Jake, what about you?
Weirdly, I was sat there just thinking myself for goal scorers, and I was going to pick the exact same as what you went for, actually. I was going to say 2-0. I think Dzeko will score, and I think DeMarco will score against his old club. He'll assist Dzeko's goal as well.
Mo, what about you? What do you think?
I'm having exactly what Rahul is having. So put me in for 3 goals. Lautaro, Skriniar, renewal, and we'll add a DiMarco goal for good measure.
Right, it's time for the part of the show where we pay tribute, rip piss out of, and criticize someone or something heavily in the world of football. Starting with the positivity, this week's Moratti, which will be presented by Mr. Positivity, Mr. Mohamed Nasser.
He works a lot, he's intelligent, and he surprises people sometimes with his ideas. Not easy to find one person of this qualities.
So yeah, I mean, again, working overtime in this episode, all hour long. But my Moratti of the week has got to be the man who I kind of slated earlier in the season. I believe I gave him Moratti in the first half of the season as well. Federico Di Marco. That assist against Napoli. I believe it was you, Jake, who said he's got a wand for a left foot. A magic wand for a left foot. It was picture perfect. That cross was sensational. Of course, Dzeko's header was fantastic as well. But I mean, yeah, that assist for me was A, beautiful, and B, very important because we won our first head-to-head against the big team. And yeah, so I gave it to Di Marco, and hopefully, like we said, he continues his good form against Hellas over the weekend.
I think, for me, that goal, Mkhitaryan in that game, and I got to say, he's been really decent, Mkhitaryan, this season, I think. But then that's why I had the sombrero in the 93rd minute against Monza in the middle of the pitch, losing possession, is even more infuriating because he's an experienced player, and I don't understand what he was doing there. I know Rahul's going to make fun of me and call me Brexit Nima, but yeah, just put it up and just whack the ball up the pitch.
No, I completely agree. You can't be doing a sombrero there.
They're like, why? Like kick it out, put it up in row Z. Yeah, let's go full on Tony Adams, Paul Merson, and Joe Cole, and I don't know who else on this. Right, let's move on to something much more positive, or something much more comical, I should say. This week's Frog, which will be presented by Mr. Jake Small.
So most weeks when we head to this part of the pod, I have come up with some rather ridiculous stories as part of this season, and I always try my best to try and make a bit of a link to Inter whilst I'm doing them. And this week's Frog relates to Lukas Podolski. Over the last week, he's been involved in a rather bizarre incident in a charity five-a-side match. I don't know if you've already seen this, Nima, but I was laughing in the video. So he was playing in a five-a-side match raising charity in Germany, and he was sent off by the referee in a charity five-a-side game indoors.
How?
Pulling his team, pulling the opposition member back. He was absolutely livid at this and sort of started to argue with the referee. Because it was a tiny five-a-side pitch, a bit like the old Masters, in England that they used to do, a little bit that sort of situation. So being sent off meant he literally had to stand over the advertising board and just stand alongside the pitch. He was that angry, every time the referee would walk past, he was trying to squirt him with water out of a water bottle, which really made me laugh.
Are you making this up?
No, I'm serious. And then towards the end of the game, he was just absolutely berating the referee. Big argument at the end of the game between him and the ref.
At a charity event.
So it's just totally killed this idea of this being a charity football game. And his
was
team
his
lost.
own charity event.
What was it?
No, this is a German event that takes place each year. And he's been sent off in a charity game. Absolutely exploded in anger. And his team ended up losing. So, he's raised $2 million for charity, taken part in raising that $2 million. But is it worth it? I think the squirt in the water.
How do you get? Yeah, I mean, this is so bizarre. How the hell do you get sent off at a charity game and then you sit there and squirt water?
I just Googled this as it was his own charity tournament.
Oh wow! Oh, wow.
That is amazing. That is absolutely amazing. That is. Jesus Christ. I don't know what to say after that. Right. Let's move on to something much more negative. This week's Moggi, which we presented by Mr. Rahul Sharma.
Yeah, well, we had a lot of choices this week,
Yes, we did.
as often is the case with Inter. Shout out first of all to the guy that Nima claims I'm the Lord General Commander of his fan base, Tuku Correa. I think whatever your slander name you give him. Tuku Diarrhea is my favorite one personally.
No, Pupu Porea, which what's his name calls him, is really funny.
It's not just
Yeah, that's really funny.
His cameo, as we mentioned earlier, against Napoli, I think definitely deserved the shout, but he didn't win it. And then Lukaku came along, or Lakaka, our favorite.
And along came Lakaka.
And along came Lakaka with his donkey touch or Timberland's touch or whatever you want to call it. But the winner is Juan Lukasaki. I mean, his name itself deserves a Moggi of the week. I mean, his dad clearly got confused. He clearly wants to call him Gianluca, but he got maybe
Juan Luca.
he spent the summer in Argentina or Mexico and felt like, no, let's go with Juan Luca instead of Gianluca.
Calling my son Juan Luca.
Definitely didn't get bullied at school.
Absolutely not.
He's been suspended for a month after his awful refereeing performance for Inter Monza. But yeah, use the VAR, mate. Like, that's the whole point of VAR, so use it.
I mean, if Gagliardini had done something, I could have lived with it, right? But the fact that he blows his whistle and those the two Monza defenders trip over one another, that's like,
yeah,
it's just
nothing.
Yeah, it's just like, for goodness
It was like
sake.
the one, the Juve Cremonese where he just blew
Yeah.
when Leicester scored, and he just blew the whistle before he scored. It was like,
Yeah, why?
Yeah.
Weird. Right, that's all we had time for this week. I'd like to thank you, Mo, for coming on, as always. A pleasure.
Always a pleasure, guys. Thank you for having me. Hopefully on to bigger and better things, and dreams of at least a Scudetto this season.
Inshallah. And Mr. Jake Smalley.
Yeah, thank you for having me as always. Good to be back, and Happy New Year as well to everybody.
Yes, and Mr. Rahul Sharma. So how long? So what's happening on your channel? You got anything else that you want to promote, or something that's coming up? Then feel free to do that.
No, just the usual match reactions and previews and things like that. And thank you for having me on as always. But my lawyers are working hard day and night to get rid of this career sexual tag you've given me.
I'll be looking forward to their letter. I'm sure. I'm really looking forward to hearing from them. Right, let's. That's all we have time for this week. Take care of yourselves, each other. My name's Nima Tavale, wishing you a good week. Quarterfinal in the Coppa Italia, 3 points, and sempre e solo forza Inter.